Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to day 4 of our first annual Careers Week. I'm Angela Priest. I'm the COO here at Alma Me. I'm joined by my amazing co-founder, Elena Hoffer. Um, and we want to give you a little background for those of you who haven't heard it yet, into what we do, why we do it. But really, Elena and I came together about 3 years ago now. I think it's been 3 years. I can't believe it. Um, but we came together around this problem. So I was coming from the hiring side where I was observing that it was getting harder and harder to find really qualified talent. I had worked with a lot of really amazing PhDs, one of whom Skylar will be hearing from in just a minute, over the years. And Elena was coming out of her doctoral career and realizing that she was having more fun having the conversations at the water cooler than she was at the bench. And so together we really kind of identified that PhDs, the hiring pipeline between academia and industry was really broken. And we were seeing that a lot of PhDs coming to us would tell us about how they had been sending in hundreds of applications and not getting any interviews. And so with my hiring experience and Elena's experience of kind of what PhDs go through. Ooh, I'm hearing an echo. Um, Okay. That's good. Thank you, Elena. So with those two experiences between the two of us, we're really able to understand what we needed to fix and how we could get there. And so I have over 20 years of hiring experience across software, consumer brands, data, tech. I've reviewed probably thousands of resumes. I have been in countless hiring rooms, so I really understand what happens behind the scenes. I understand the things that people don't tell you about the hiring process. And so that combined with Elena's experience living the transition, we really identified, okay, we've got to open up the curtain and kind of help people understand what's really happening so they can spend their time and energy in the right places. And so what we developed is we developed something called the Done For You job search. So you can think of us a little bit like a marketing agency for PhDs, where just like a company would go to a marketing agency to build a marketing campaign and help them speak to their customers and help get their customers to buy. We build your resume for you, we build your cover letter for you, and then we actually run your job search so that you can focus on skill development, preparing for interviews and things like that. And we really focus primarily with folks in STEM, pharma, data science, biotech. And we really help you to understand how to tell your narrative in a way that that hiring teams will know and understand. And so if you're in this position that a lot of PhDs are, we understand that the job search can really lead to a lot of burnout. It can lead you to question your own self-esteem. Sometimes you just don't have time because it's a full-time job to do a job search. And so we really help take all of that burden off of you. And what we've seen is that people who go through our program are often getting 2 to 3 times as many interviews as PhDs who are running their own searches. And when we get to offer stage, they're seeing on average 23% more than their base target salary. So if you're interested in what we do, you can apply to our job search program on our website. If you're from a university, I know we've had some university folks attending this week. You can reach out to us at hello@alma.me. We do partner with universities to help bring our methods and some e-learning courses into those. And if you're an employer, we work with over 50 really talented PhDs, and we do a lot of work in terms of communications training and things with them so that they're industry ready by the time they get to you. So feel free to email us at talent@almame if you'd like any introductions or have any interest in that. So that's enough of that though. Let's get into the main event. I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Skylar Butner. She is a principal AI scientist or architect, sorry, Skylar, with Vail Resorts. I had the pleasure of working with her. She is one of the most talented data scientists I know. She comes from a degree in social psychology, and she's going to share with all of you her journey. So thank you, Skylar, for joining us, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and for that introduction. Also, I'm on vacation right now, so apologize for like the disheveled beach hair, but you're also getting like the relaxed version of me, so I think probably a net win for everyone. But yeah, like Angela mentioned, I started out getting my PhD in social psychology. I graduated in the fall of 2019, so I've been out of the program for 6.5, almost 7 years now, which is pretty wild. My dissertation focused on how people change or like protect their beliefs in response to new information. So like when people either get new information that goes against like what they thought about a person, their initial first impression, or even, something as big like as their, kind of overarching like moral systems and things like that. I looked into the sort of like social cognition mechanisms that help people protect that information. So really fun, really meaty, always like very current and like cool research. Um, and I think something I really want to be transparent about is I didn't totally leave academia of my own volition. So I went, to school went to the University of Texas at Austin. Our programs and like the support we had was actually pretty good for people leaving academia, but we also had like really productive, high intense research. So sort of like the world was our oyster coming out of those programs, to be honest. I went to school with a lot of people who were either, 100% set on academia or 100% set on, non-academic jobs and industry. There's not usually a lot of in between. And I was like in the former camp. I was dead set on getting a tenure track position. I went on the job market in my 5th year, was actually pretty successful. So got like 3 on-site interviews, but didn't end up getting an offer. And sort of after that, it was like, what's happening? Like I feel like my dream's sort of crumbling. So I just want to highlight that because I think a lot of times when you're coming out of those programs too, it feels like, oh, everyone like knows what they want to do and figured out. Like I did not. Like I was just sort of, almost forced into this, to be completely honest. But after that experience on the job market and it sort of not panning out, I started talking to friends and family who were just like, we also kind of hate to tell you, but you're not totally happy. Like you're working really hard, you're struggling a lot though, mentally you're not really taking care of yourself. So like maybe this is kind of a blessing in disguise and will push you into a path that like feels better for you personally. So not to like to my own horn, but like I also want to say like I probably couldn't have done my PhD any more successfully. Like I had a ton of first author publications. My advisor was really well known. He also said that I was like the best student he ever had, which was like the most wild recognition I've probably ever gotten in my entire career, maybe entire life, coming from him. And it was also to the point where I had like my own brand recognition. Like people in the field knew me. They like cited my research. Like I was pretty successful. So if that feels like you, where you're like, I don't know what else I could have done, it's not you. It's academia. Like it doesn't set anyone up for success. It's very like very much happenstance. Um, so that's a little bit of my background. So after I sort of started thinking more about going into the industry position, I talked to my advisor. I also had like an extremely supportive advisor, which I was really lucky to have. And I said, hey, this didn't pan out. I don't know that I want to do academia. So how about we make a deal? You keep me on for my 6th year. I'll keep doing research, publishing. I'll go ahead and apply for academic jobs again, but I'm also going to start looking elsewhere. So he's like, yep, fine. Um, Out of that, I decided I needed to like probably figure out something else I could do. So I took my first like coding class, which is like basically an R class for statisticians. So before that, I had only worked in like SPSS. I knew stats and research, but no coding, nothing data science adjacent. Like that was my first exposure. So I was also pretty late in the game. And I also like just sort of did a shotgun blast of applications. I was applying for UX research positions, data science positions, market research positions. Like if I had heard someone go for a PhD into that field, like I was applying for it. So I wasn't very focused just because I didn't know, right? Like I hadn't explored any of this. So I was kind of using the job search to explore some of that. I think I applied to well over 100 jobs. Wasn't I got some interviews here and there, but just like wasn't getting any offers or things like that. And then by some miracle, I can't even express to anyone usually like how weird it feels to tell this story. But the first company I worked at had also a social scientist, so he had gotten his PhD in political science, and he was now their chief data science officer. He firmly believed that like social science PhDs were like an untapped market, especially for data science. And so he would just email university listservs and be like, "Hey, I'm looking for roles in this space. Is anyone interested? Do you want to chat?" So I responded to his email and I was like, "Sure, what could go wrong?" So I want to highlight that like if you're struggling to find, land interviews and things like that, just like taking a different approach, looking for good networking opportunities, like that's really what it takes. It's not about just like continuing to throw out interviews, like take a step back and be like, I need to figure something else out. And like things will start working much better for you. So after my PhD, I joined a company called ERPI, which has since been acquired by a larger company, which is like kind of a funny thread that runs through my career now that I'm thinking about it. Once I leave a company, they tend to get acquired. So that's interesting. Um, so ERPI was a federal consulting firm. So if you're not from the US, our like federal government, a lot of the work they do, they'll have like full-time employees in the government, but then they'll also contract out a lot of the work to companies that will support them in that have like specialization. So I was specifically on a contract that was looking at like call center modernization for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And whenever I joined that contract, we actually did not have analytics as part of that contract at all. We were purely like a staff augmentation, like management, program management sort of role. They put me on that contract, said, "Hey, just go in there and kind of like figure out something cool we can do that will like show them that we know analytics and they should like up our contract to do that." So super open-ended, super like scary because I was like, I'm also like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been a data scientist before. At this point, I didn't even know SQL, which is like the most basic thing you kind of have to know as a data scientist. So I was truly learning on the fly, but they hired me because they're like, you can think big picture. We can throw you into this like really ambiguous problem set and you'll work your way out of it. Like that was clear from interviews. So, did that and like through that, really learned that that was true. I was like, okay, I do have something to offer beyond technical skills, and it's not always about the technical skills, right? Like that's not always what really matters most. Um, so it was a really good learning opportunity for me. I was only there for a year. I pretty quickly outgrew that role just because I was like, okay, I'm doing a lot here, but I do really want to go into the more technical side. I'm the only data scientist. I don't really have someone to learn from. And so that's sort of what motivated my kind of next job search. And that's when I joined Gut Check, which is a market research company. And that's where I worked with Angela. Um, I also want to highlight just from my ERPI and Gut Check experience that something I really learned is like the words data science like have no real meaning. Like there are 1,000 different variations of what data science could mean from, I was like basically a management consultant doing data science on the side to prove a point to the VA. Gut check was similar, in that it was a really cool opportunity because I was actually on the software engineering team. And so basically at the company, we had two data scientists. One was sort of the customer facing data scientist where he would like build products or like help companies analyze their data. And then I was his counterpart on the software engineering team, and the software engineering team was trying to kind of build out automation suites to help our researchers kind of move faster and standardize their process. So I'd basically take what our customer facing data scientist was doing, translate that to the software engineers, and kind of help them build out that software. What was really cool about that for me was one, I knew nothing about software engineering, and the people I worked with were incredible. They were like, "Who cares?" They were surprised that I knew how to code at all, so they were like, "Awesome, we'll teach you how to do it." So it was really fun. They were extremely supportive, like probably one of the best teams I've ever worked on. Um, and going into that role, I didn't know Python at all, which again is like becoming pretty standard for data scientists to use. What was really interesting is none of the software engineering team knew Python either. I thought, like, everyone would know it. I thought that was a pretty standard language, but none of them used it. So we're like, "You know what? To build the software that has data science and, like, data analytics behind it, we need to learn Python." So we literally learned it together. Like, we would take teeny tiny little pieces of the software, all learn it together and execute it. So super fun job. Um I was only at that role for a year as well, so similar story. I would say outgrew it really quickly or just, like, realize it, to take the next step in my career and, like, the direction I wanted to go, I probably needed to look for something different just because some of the work we were doing was starting to slow down, and I didn't, wanna slow down with it. So that's when I joined Vail, which is where I currently am. I've been there for over 4 years, and I'm on my 3rd role. So I started as a senior data scientist, moved up to senior manager of the data science and machine learning engineering team. And then for the last year, I've moved over to our digital engineering team where I'm our AI architect. And I've recently taken on a backend architect role on top of that as well. So what I do there is like, again, really um, help our like mobile engineering team especially think about like what it means to build an application that's AI native and like really scalable in terms of AI. Um, Before I joined Vail, like I had never put a machine learning model into production. I knew nothing about the ski industry. If you don't know what Vail is, it's like a giant like ski conglomerate. We own 42 mountain resorts across the world. I didn't know anything about like digital engineering, mobile apps, websites, anything like that. And like AI is newer than when I've been there, so I also didn't know about LLMs or anything like that. So just want to like highlight that that's a really like common thread through all of my roles. Is like I didn't know everything. In fact, I didn't know most things. What I did know is how to learn things, how to figure things out. Also being on like a lot of software engineering teams, I've learned that like a lot of software engineers don't like to talk to quote the business. Like they don't like to talk to executives. They just like to sit in front of their computer and code. And that's something I'm really good at. I'm good at telling stories, thinking big picture. So that's what sort of helps me stand out within these really technical teams while I'm learning some of the more technical stuff. So yeah, at Vail, I've learned a lot about like how resilient I am, how well I can build connections with the people around me to achieve common goals, and how I can tell cohesive stories. So at each step of my career, I just really think about like what's the next thing I need to learn and what am I getting out of this role, and that's what kind of keeps me moving forward and think about, when it's time to move on or when I need to pivot and things like that to make sure I'm still moving in the right direction. So super exciting role right now. I also just want to say I one of my early mentors always said like you should always be interviewing even if you don't want to get a new role. Like it's good just to like toss a resume out there here and there or just like keep your eye out for really interesting opportunities. So even if you don't end up taking those roles, it helps you understand what the market's like, where it's headed. Just kind of keep on top of trends. And I also want to highlight that in doing that, like I still struggle to get interviews sometimes. And I don't say that to scare you. It's just like again, you can be doing everything right, and sometimes times it doesn't land, and you just need to kinda rethink what you're doing. When I do get interviews, about 90% of the time, it's because I had a connection that referred me. So, another theme throughout is just, like, can't understate, like, the importance of networking, even just, like, a quick introduction, like, you don't have to know someone super well, just answering email, um, can be really helpful. So, yeah, that's my story. Definitely wanna leave plenty of time for questions, and I'm open to answering, like, any question truly, so, feel free to
S
toss them my way.
So, one of the things I love about your story, Skylar, and it's something that we use in I do use you as an example in our coaching sometimes because you have such an interesting career history where you're just kind of fearless in taking the chance on a subject matter that you don't know and
Yeah.
and learning how to communicate with people of different stripes. Like that was something that I always noticed about you when we worked together was that like mentioned a lot of data scientists, a lot of engineers and kind of more technical folks don't like talking to people. And so when you're somebody who is in those fields who really hones in and focuses on your communication skills, you stand out from the pack. Because a lot of those other interviews, they're awkward, they're stilted, it's like trying to like pull things out of people. And so if you're somebody who can communicate well, it does really differentiate you. And so I'm looking at the comments and looking at some of the questions of like, you didn't have the skills. How is that possible? And we talk about that a lot in our program where I think PhDs have a little bit of a perception that you have to have all the skills to get hired. And so one of the questions that I see coming up in the chat is like, how are you getting hired into these areas when you don't have all the skills?
Yeah, great question. I think it really boils down to a couple things. One is that, like, especially early on, I looked for what I would say, like, kind of weird data science roles, right? Like, the one at ERPI was bizarre, like, not a true data science role, and I just sort of morphed it into what I wanted to be. So, a lot of it is about trying to suss out from postings and, like, what you know about the company, like, what are they actually looking for? So, like, even today, like, I'm not getting a job at Facebook, Amazon, Google, like, those things are I don't want them, but I also, like, those are not the things that I would be applying for. Applying for smaller, more niche things where they're sort of expecting me to wear a lot of hats and be able to learn on the job. And then on top of that, also as I've kind of pivoted in my career, I'm always just looking for like those pivots have always been like Venn diagrams, right? Like I know and can do some things that are really critical to the role. And it's just like, okay, I don't know this like one or two thing that does seem really critical, but I'm really good at learning them. And there's an art to like things like technical interviews and stuff where a lot of it's also just about storytelling, right? Like some of it's coding, but it's about talking through how I'm thinking about things. So being able to talk through your own thoughts and like knowing your own story and how to tell that, like those things end up being much more critical in interviews than, being able to ramble off like a computer science syllabus.
Yeah. So there's a question in here, and I want to help answer this because I was actually involved with your interview process when you were applying for Gut Check and you had no coding experience. So I was privy to the conversations that happened about why we chose to hire you. So there's a question in here that says, why do you think they pick you and not an experienced data scientist fluent in coding, as there must be plenty of them on the market? So, what happened in the hiring room when we hired Skylar was we knew that she wasn't an experienced coder. We had experienced coders within our business. But what our business was really struggling with at the time is having people who had what we called a commercial mindset. They had a business mindset. They had a very solution oriented mindset and could kind of think about the balance between solving the problem and knowing that we didn't need a perfect solution, we needed a solution that would get us to the next stage of kind of our product. And that was much more important to us than the coding because you can teach coding. Like, and if you have somebody like Skylar coming in, who it's very clear that she's an avid learner, and she came into that interview prepared and was talking about things that she had investigated prior to the interview. So that told us that, okay, she's intellectually curious, so she's gonna come in and we're not gonna have to prompt her to learn, she's gonna do it on her own. So if there's something she doesn't know, she's gonna figure it out. Number 2, she was really kind of, humble in what she knew and didn't know, which was a huge value for our company. We had a value around humility and kind of understanding that your solution isn't always the best solution. She came in, with that really constructive mindset. Um, and she also came in again as a technical person who was able to speak fluently with non-technical people. And you don't see that often. And so that combination of things, when we looked at her, we're like, yes, she's a yes on every dimension. And we have enough people in our business that we can train her on the other things.
Yeah.
So so I don't know if you have any comments on any of your other roles, but that was the conversation we had about you, in case you didn't know, Skylar.
Yeah, well, that was fun to hear. I think that's probably a very similar conversation has probably happened for every role that I've gotten, and I think one thing I've realized is that, like, yeah, the learning agility and being able to think through an ambiguous problem is not a skill that most people have. So even on my current like software engineering team, if you're not used to like what those workflows look like, we like write tickets. So it's like, here's a really specific thing you're trying to solve in the code. And my software engineers, like, they need a lot of specificity on that, like to the point where sometimes I'm like, now with AI, like I could just write that code if I'm having to write this level of specificity for you. So yeah, being able to work through ambiguous problems and like being able to work without all the information is again not a skill that a lot of people have. And like as a PhD, something that you couldn't have survived without.
Yeah, I agree. And I still see that all the time. Like in hiring, where you need somebody who can problem solve. And what unfortunately, like in some of the lower levels of academia, what's being turned out is people who are very good at order taking. And it creates this situation where you either have to have a very heavy management layer or you need to hire more people who can function and problem solve in the ambiguity. And so there's this tension around those two things
Right.
that is happening in businesses and has been happening, quite frankly, for almost the past 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
because there's kind of this misalignment between the academic track from bachelor's all the way through and how industry has evolved over that time period.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
um, so let me see what else. Um, so one person actually said, "Do you think that the data science job market is getting saturated? All people want to enter it. So do you recommend entering this job?"
I would still recommend entering this job. It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's completely saturated. I think it's probably more balanced than it has been in the past. In the past, it was like, people could go to Amazon and get like $600,000 because like there were no data scientists and like they really needed them. That's definitely not the world we're in anymore. Like it's a skill set a lot more people are picking up, especially out of like colleges. Whenever I was in college, like data science was not really a thing, and now like you can get a degree in it. So I think it's becoming more balanced. Don't think we're to the point where we have like, more applicants than we have jobs. And whenever I was a hiring manager, I would say, like, I would get upwards of, like, 500 applications for a single role. 450 of them were not, like, remotely what I would be looking for, and I'm talking, like, I had, like, real estate agents apply for them and things like that. So when people say, like, they get a lot of application, that's true, but it's so easy to filter most of them out. And so I would pay attention to experience. I would also, like, pay attention for social science PhDs as well because I knew what skill set those would offer. I would look for really strong, cohesive, resumes as well. So I don't think it's as easy to get a job in it as it was before, but I also don't think it's, like, necessarily a dire situation. I also think with AI, like LLMs and stuff coming into play, I think there are a lot more roles that look like data science used to in the past, like, those skills are starting to transfer to other areas of the business as well.
Yeah. So what would you say, because the other thing is here in your story, referrals obviously played a big role. For a lot of the folks on the call and a lot of the people we work with, they struggle with that because they don't have strong networks.
Mhm.
So how would you what guidance would you give based on your experience to people who maybe don't have the strong network, on how they can cut through the clutter?
Yeah. First of all, I would say building a strong network is not that hard. So like that's something everyone should start trying to do. Where I would look for starting out those networks is look for people from your programs that have made industry transitions and reach out to them on LinkedIn. You take advantage of there's like lots of, networking things you can pay for. There's also like, meetup.com has like data science stuff. Like just start going to things and, like, even small conferences and stuff in your area and just, like, talk to people. And then I also just did, like, a lot of cold emailing as well. Like, I would just look for people on LinkedIn and be like, "Does your path seem really interesting? Does it look similar to mine?" I'm gonna reach out on LinkedIn. The worst you can do is say no or never respond. Who cares? Like, um, a lot of I think what you'll find too is a lot of PhDs too that have made the transition, like, just remember what it was like and are willing to help. Um, and then if you don't have that network built yet, I think something you can do is like the way your resume reads really matters. Like if it takes me a while to kind of suss out what you know and what you've done, I'm not like I spend 10 seconds on it. I'm gonna toss it away if I can't like really quickly look at it and figure out who you are. And then I think you can also like reaching out to recruiters and stuff on LinkedIn and just be like, "Hey, this is who I am. What would it look like for me to, join your company?" I think that also sometimes that doesn't work out just because recruiters get really inundated with a lot of stuff, especially at smaller companies. Again, what's the worst that could happen? They don't respond. That's fine. So I think just like learning to reach out and being comfortable with that and like really knowing what your narrative is, being able to tell like your elevator pitch and like what you bring to the table is really important.
Yeah. And I think somebody said this really well yesterday we had somebody talking about kind of hiring manager perspective, and it was that publications are not your currency. And I heard something that you said just now where it's like, I'm looking at what you can do. I'm
Yep.
not looking that you can write about what you do. I'm looking
Yep.
at what you can do. And
Yep.
so I think that's a really important thing as well. So with that, I do want to kind of wrap up. We've got a couple more speakers, but I want to thank you, Skylar, for sharing your story, for also being vulnerable around the hard parts of your story, because I think there's so many people out there who just sit in silence around that, and they think they're the only one. And I hear a similar story so many times. I mean, it's a common conversation during my week, and so thank you for taking time out of your vacation to come and to come and chat with us. So,
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.